there are very few things I pride myself on. One of the things I do pride myself on, though, is the fact that I have very few blind spots when it comes to video game genres or franchises. However, there is one very massive blind spot that I can admit to, and that is the JRPG / turn-based RPG genre, whatever you want to call that all-encompassing term for those kind of games. One of my biggest blind spots. That and RTSs, but that's not going to change anytime soon. There is one franchise within that genre that does get a lot of praise. So much so to the point where I can't really ignore it anymore. I enjoy great video games. And everyone's telling me that these Persona games, they're some great video games. So I had to check them out. Obviously, there are a lot of great entry points to the Persona franchise now in 2024, whether it be the highly acclaimed and most talked about game in the franchise, Persona 5 Royal, or the recent remake of Persona 3 with Persona 3 Reload. Those are the most modern entries you could get into in this day and age. So naturally, I started with Persona 4 Golden, which ostensibly is the most dated of those games. Of course, there is Persona 3 Portable, but with Persona 3 Remake out, of course, I'm not going to play the original if I could play the remake. But I started with Persona 4 Golden, as I'm sure you already knew that because that's what this video is about. And you may be asking, well, why? Why'd you start there? Well, it's quite simple, really. I got an OLED Switch for Christmas. My first Switch. Any other time I've used a Switch, it's been a family Switch. This is my personal Switch. And I've heard so much about these Persona games. And one of the things I've heard so much about these Persona games is that they are like 100 hours long. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to commit to a Persona game, because I've heard so many good things about them, I need to try them. I'll have to just deal with the I hit you, you hit me, I hit you combat. If I'm going to do that, which one should I play? And yes, Persona 5 Royal is on the Nintendo Switch. But the Nintendo Switch, it's kind of a dated system if we're being completely honest with ourselves here. So I was like, hey, in that case, I'm not going to play Persona 5 Royal on the Switch. It's not going to run as well as it could on, say, a Series X. And I'm not going to play Persona 3 Portable because the remake is around the corner. So I decided to get Persona 4 Golden, which is not a very demanding game at all. I mean, look at it. And that started me on this whole journey, which has led me here to this video, to this overdue review of Persona 4 Golden. And as this is the second overdue review I've ever done, I am still finding the format for these videos. And basically, the format that I am comfortable with at this moment is to start the first half with a more general overview, more of an actual review sort of discussion before going into the second half where I essentially just talk about my experience with the game. And since this is overdue in terms of reviews, I'm sure so many people out there have already played Persona 4 Golden and would just love to hear more discussion about one of their favorite games, or in some cases, one of their least favorite games. Who knows? Who knows? So let's just start with my general overall thoughts on Persona 4 Golden in a non-spoiler capacity. That will be saved for the second half, of course. Persona 4 Golden is the first Persona game I've played, so I don't really know if the things that I'm going to say are like just the general things for the entire franchise or whether or not they're just Persona 4 Golden specific. So keep that in mind in case I say something that's wrong about Persona overall. Persona 4 Golden starts off with you playing as the new kid in a small town who has to move here for a year because his parents are off doing something or other. I honestly don't remember what the explanation is in game. But you are sent to a small town where you are now living with your uncle and his daughter, your cousin. That's how that works, relation-wise. Right, nailed it. And as the new kid in town, you are enrolled into a new high school where you are a student. And you actually have to pay attention in class. They'll give you lectures that go over certain topics. And then at the end of the semester, you have to take a quiz and those things will come back up again. So pay attention in class. And of course, while you're in school, you are meeting all of these new people, making friends, joining clubs. And here's a little tip for you if you are listening to this as a review sort of thing, just join every club possible. Take every part-time job you can, because also you can take part-time jobs to get money, because hey, you need money. That's what makes the world go round. I recommend that you join every club and take on as many jobs as you can, because something that I didn't realize, this being my first Persona game, this being my first time at all in any of these games, it doesn't actually matter, because you'll join a club and they'll say, oh, we have to meet up on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays, something like that. It doesn't actually matter. You aren't forced to go to those meetings every week. So just join every club and go whenever you want. Because if I knew that, I would have joined every club instead of just the one club that I joined. So basically you're just living life as a student in Persona 4 Golden. Except that's not the entire game. Although honestly, it could be the entire game, because that is a great time in of itself. Not necessarily the schooling part, but the talking to all of these other characters in the school. Your Yosuke's, your Chie's, your Yukiko's. And of course, if you haven't played this game, you don't know who they are, but they'll become your best friends, okay? Learning about all of these different characters, all these other students within the school, and all the characters in the small town of Inaba, it's just a great time and could be a very good game all on its own. But that's not all the game has to offer. There's a crime that has occurred in this small town. There has been a murder. And then that sets off the course of the main gameplay, where you learn about this other world. This is all very early on. This is all the main objective of the game, so it's not spoiling anything. But the murder happens and you learn of this TV world where you just jump inside of a TV and you are just in a whole other world with monsters in it. And that's where you fight. So let's talk about that, right? Fighting. Because earlier in this video, I talked about how I do not like turn-based combat in games. Persona 4 Golden's changed my mind on that. It's changed my whole worldview on that. The way Persona 4 Golden gets away with it, in my opinion, is the fact that it got its hooks in me early. Because you don't start a combat scenario for a good maybe 4 or 5 hours in this game. And by that point, you have already grown attachments to the characters, to the story, to the world. So you're like, well, I gotta see this through. I gotta see what happens to Yosuke next. What's gonna happen with Chie? What's Yukiko's deal, you know? So I gotta push through this combat system that I'm not a fan of to see what's gonna happen next. I have to find out who did the murders, of course. So I was like, okay, I'll deal with the turn-based combat. The presentation of the turn-based combat in Persona 4 Golden is the best I've seen, period. Of course, I don't play very many turn-based RPGs. I don't count Baldur's Gate in that because I still consider that more of an XCOM thing, which, I mean, yeah, it is literally turn-based, but you know what I mean. It's not I hit you, you hit me, I hit you. You're actually moving around and stuff. The presentation of Persona 4 Golden's combat is just so much more satisfying than I've experienced in any other game, of the turn-based variety, of course, where you're rewarded for finding the enemy's weaknesses. In something like Pokemon, it just does more damage. And Pokemon's pretty much like my only other point of reference for turn-based, now that I think about it. But when it comes to Persona 4, whenever you hit an enemy's weakness, you knock them down. And if you knock an enemy down, you get to go again. And then if you get another enemy's weakness, you can knock them down. And then once they're all knocked down, you can send everyone in there and do just massive damage. And it's a great system that really kept me going throughout the entire game, where I'd be like, okay, what's this enemy's weakness? And then I would build my party around having all of the different elements so that I would always be able to find an enemy's weakness. And it just made for a very good time in terms of the combat, which I did not expect from turn-based systems like that. And then along with that, the way that the characters, the NPCs, like I mentioned before, Yosuke, Chie, Yukiko, they're my core squad, by the way. They were there the whole time for me. The way that their combat skills improve as their characters develop throughout the story is just so fascinating to watch happen, where throughout their personal character growth as a person, their combat skills will deepen and enhance based on their stories progressing, which goes a long way into marrying these two halves of the game, the student life sim and the dungeon crawling, monster hunting sort of thing. So the way that those two things intersect just really come together in a very, very good way. So if you aren't big on turn-based combat systems, I would recommend trying this game. It's very cheap. It's always on sale. $12 is what I got it for. I bought it again on my Xbox because I loved it that much. I mentioned this in the last Overdue review for Final Fantasy VII Remake. That was probably the quickest time a game's gone from a game I'm playing to a game that is one of my all-time favorites. The same can be said for Persona 4 Golden. I am really just thriving right now, okay? I was playing Persona 4 Golden while I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, so just going from amazing experience to amazing experience has just been one of the best. I'm thriving, okay? I'm having a great time. Video games are cool, okay? I don't know if you knew that, but video games are cool. The last thing I can say about Persona 4 Golden without just going into spoilers about my experience with the game in terms of the story is that Persona 4 Golden is the kind of game that I wish I played so much earlier in my life. Because yes, you are playing as a high school student, and I'm not in high school anymore, obviously. I don't know if that's obvious, actually. I'm not in high school anymore, period. So it reminds you of simpler times, because times were a lot simpler in high school. You just had to worry about some tests and the people you were in school with. That's really all you had to worry about. I didn't have a serial killer in town while I was in high school, so I guess there's a bit of a difference there. It brings you back to simpler times, and it does a really good job of just showing you what friendship really should look like. It sounds corny, I know. Also, this game is rated M, which is shocking. I mean, it's not shocking when you play it, but when you look at it, it's like, this is an M-rated game, really? But when you play it, you understand why it's rated M. Anyways. Not to sound corny, it gives you the best display of friendship that I feel like I've seen in any video game. Maybe except for Kingdom Hearts, because, you know, Kingdom Hearts is friendship or whatever. I don't remember. I haven't played that game in so long. I should play it again at some point. I'm going off the rails right now. If I had played Persona 4 Golden before I went to high school, or as I was starting high school, I would have realized so much sooner that the people I was surrounding myself with during high school were not my friends. It's as simple as that. And so for that reason, Persona 4 Golden hits me more on like a personal level, where it's just like, this is what high school should have been like. This is what it could have been if I did anything else, you know? So that's one of the reasons why, yeah, it's one of my favorite games of all time now, because it just, the way that it gets you to care about all of these characters that you meet on your journey, it's amazing, okay? I am not afraid to admit this game made me cry very, very hard. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say when or what it was about, but this game just really hit me on a personal level that I don't think any game has done before. So yeah, that's all I can say about Persona 4 Golden without going into spoilers. If you haven't played it, you need to. Do yourself a favor and go play this game. It's one of the best games ever made, period. And now welcome to the spoiler section. There's a lot that I would like to say about Persona 4 Golden's story. So much so that I'm sure as soon as I finish recording this, I'm going to be like, dang, I didn't even mention X, Y, and Z. But I am going to try to keep it brief because I could go on for hours about this game. But I am just going to try to hit a few major beats that I would like to get to. And most of which, of course, are going to be more late game things, because those are when the twists and turns really happen and where I really want to talk about these things. With it being a murder mystery, a serial killer, detective story sort of thing, something I was wondering throughout the game was, is it just going to tell me who it is at the end? Is that what it's going to come down to? And the answer was no. Of course, we are in spoiler section, so you already know because you played it if you're here. You get to that moment in the winter time. I don't remember when. It was snowing, right? Where you go out there with Naoto. You know Naoto because you played the game. And then it's just like, who could it be? Because at this point in the game, you are given every clue possible, and you should be able to figure it out on your own. Who is the serial killer? Who did this? Who started this all? Who started this whole thing off? And I nailed it. I knew it was Adachi. I got his ass. It was great. It was a great moment. You are given every clue possible. You should know who it is by this point. But it still felt so satisfying because the game does not hold your hand in this moment. It's just like, hey, you should know. You should know. Here's a list of every single person in this game. Who is it? And then selected Adachi, and I was like, got his ass. One of the most satisfying experiences in a long time. But yeah, to double back and talk about why I was crying so much. Yeah, I cried a lot in this game. Because like I mentioned, I didn't really have the best friend group in high school. And everyone in this game, they're the best of friends. You got Yosuke, Chie, Yukiko, Kanji, Naoto, Rise, and Teddy's also there. I hope I didn't miss anyone. I think I got everyone. Marie, if you want to count Marie. She wasn't really in the investigation team, but you know. But to have all of these characters really like display what friendship looks like and how much they're all in it, how much they all want to like work together to find out who the serial killer is, how much they all bond over all these social links. I didn't even talk about social links earlier. Whoops. Because every character has their own plot line you could follow if you just hang out with them after school. So you get closer with each character, you learn more about their backstories, their inner struggles and all of that. And then throughout the game, there's all these hangouts, whether you go to the beach, whether you go skiing, whether you go to Club Escapade or any number of things. You get a watermelon, you cook, you go on field trips with them. You just spend so much time with these people. And this game is really long. Like I mentioned it earlier, a lot of people talk about how these are like 100-hour experiences. I finished it in 61 hours, so it's not that long. It's still pretty long, but you spend a lot of time with these characters. Since I was playing on the Switch, it's not like these were 10 extended play sessions. These were like dozens of play sessions that were like, whether they were 30 minutes, an hour, so on and so forth. That just gave me a little bit more of each character in that moment. So it was a long experience. Like it took me like 3 months to finish this game, which I don't know if that's long. Kind of feels long in terms of video game playing. You spend a lot of time with these characters. So as you get towards the end of the game, and then you are reminded that you have to go back home, that hurt. That hurt a lot. Because you forget about that. You forget about the fact that this isn't where you actually live as a character. You have to go back home and you have to leave everyone behind. You have to leave all of these friendships and relationships that you've developed over the past year behind. And then everyone goes to the train station to say goodbye to you, and it hurts so much. I'm tearing up right now just talking about it. So we're going to talk about other things instead now. Tough. It hurt a lot. It sucked. I hated it. Like, why can't there just be an option to say, call your parents and say, I'm not coming home. I'm staying in Inaba. These are all my friends. This is where I belong. That's what should have happened. Okay. Anyways. Another thing that I should have cried about, but I was just more stunned, is the moment when Nanako gets kidnapped and then she comes back. We go rescue her. And then she dies. And I should have cried. I understand that. It was a very serious moment. But I was more shocked that happened. I couldn't believe it. And then Yosuke was all like, we're going to go kill this guy. We're going to throw this guy in the TV and kill him. We didn't, obviously. Nanako's chill. But it was just a really funny moment when we came back and the doctor was like, oh yeah, Nanako, she's okay. She bounced back, is what the doctor says. I was like, she bounced back from death? Like she flatlined. And then we left for like 20 minutes. And then when the doctor's like, hey, she bounced back. She's fine. Shocking moment, to say the least. But yeah, I very much enjoy this game. The only thing that I do not like about this game, like I would go so far as to say it's the worst part of this game. It's the fact that they introduced Naoto Shirogane way too late in this game. Because she's the best girl in the entire game. And by that point, I'd already started romancing Rise. And I don't condone cheating in any capacity, whether it be real life or video games. So I was like, well, I'm with Rise. Sucks, because Naoto's over there just being the best girl in the entire game, but, you know, it's whatever. I can't say I'm not feeling regretful. I mean, the moments I had with Rise are still very nice, and still a great person, you know? But then I met Naoto, and I'm like, come on. You know?
Especially because towards the end of the game, Naoto, more so than any other party member, is like directly interlinked with the story because, of course, she is like a learned detective. She's one of the best detectives out there. And since this is a murder mystery, she comes in handy quite a bit towards the end while we're getting closer and closer to uncovering the truth. She just feels like she has more of a personal link to the player character than other people as well. So it's not just a favoritism thing. There's actual reasoning behind it.
So I know what I'm going to do when I replay this game, because I am going to replay this game.
Oh, and while I was gathering footage for this video, turns out there's like a whole secret ending that I never saw, which is both exciting and scary to me because I love this game so much, and you need to tell me that there's more to experience out there. That's exciting. But now it's just like, oof, I missed out on something, and that bums me out. But more reason to go back to replay it. But in actuality, the only thing that I do kind of hesitate on with this game is that giant eyeball guy at the end. I don't know what was going on there. I was here for the ride. I was already like 50, 60 hours in, so I was like, sure, I'll fight a giant eyeball guy. Why not? I don't know if that has some sort of deeper meaning to the whole Persona franchise as a whole, but to me, that was just some guy with a giant eyeball, so it was weird.
And now it has me so excited for a potential Persona 4 Golden remake. But based on how people talk about Persona 3 remake, it's probably going to be Persona 4 remake, not a Persona 4 Golden remake, which is going to be a bummer. But Persona 3 Reload is getting the answer as DLC later this year, which essentially is the content that Golden would take place of. So if Persona 4 gets a remake, the Golden content would potentially be DLC. I don't know. I'm hopeful though. I just hope Persona 4 Golden is the one that gets remade and not just Persona 4. Because I experienced Persona 4 Golden, and if I play Persona 4 Remake and it's anything different than what I've experienced in Persona 4 Golden, I'm just going to be like, this sucks. So just remake Persona 4 Golden. You know what I mean? Anyways, like I said earlier, I'm sure I could go on and on about more in depth about the field trips, more in depth about the dungeons, more in depth about everything, okay? I'm sure I could talk for hours about this game. But I don't want to talk for too long. I'm sure you have so many other things you got to get to, so many other videos on this website, so many other videos that I've put out on this website as well. So, feel free to go watch one of those or any number of videos are on this website. Because if I don't stop myself now, I don't know when I'll stop. Go play this game if you haven't. And if you are listening to this part and you haven't, what's your problem? You know what I mean? Why'd you do that to yourself? Why'd you let yourself get spoiled? One of the best games of all time. Okay? And you just let me spoil it for you. Why'd you do that? You should feel bad. Go sit in the corner. Until next time though, folks, as always, stay safe and play some video games.